Okay, I will call the meeting to order for the Design Review Board meeting Thursday, March 17th, 2022. Do we have to approve the agenda? Oh, yeah. Would someone like to make a motion to approve the agenda?
I'll move so.
Second,
Second.
all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. And then we need to consider the minutes from the February 17th meeting. Are there any amendments to the minutes?
I wasn't here, so I really can't say anything.
I didn't notice anything. All right, do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
I don't know what you say. Do you say,
I move that we approve the minutes
I
of
move-
February 17th,
I move that we approve the minutes of February 17th.
or you can just say so moved.
So moved.
All right. Is there a second? Can Dave second him if he wasn't here?
I don't think so.
I don't,
Can we even approve him with the two of us?
I think you can second it.
Okay, I'll second that motion.
We're doing
All
a
those in
great
favor,
job.
say aye.
Aye.
All right. Do we want to elect officers with the mic here?
That we'll verify. any-
All right, we'll do it again if we need to.
I have had to read that.
That funny.
We can always bring them back next.
It was pretty funny.
Yeah,
I think we're killing it.
okay, yeah.
Last month, we postponed the election of officers because we only had 3 people here. Do we want to postpone again?
Sounds
Okay.
like a plan.
All right, we'll postpone it again. All right, then on to agenda item number 4. This is a quasi judicial hearing regarding the City of Cannon Beach application for improvements at the intersection of East Warren Way and South Hemlock. The intersection borders park management, residential motel, and limited commercial and residential high-density R3 zones. The application will be reviewed against the criteria of Municipal Code Chapter 17.44.080 through 17.44.100, the design review criteria. Anyone object to the jurisdiction of the Design Review Board to hear this matter at this time? Does any commission member believe he or she has a conflict of interest or a personal bias? I don't.
Me neither.
Okay. Has any commission member had any ex parte contact or made a site visit? I've made a site visit.
I made a site visit.
I make a daily site visit, sometimes more than once.
Yeah,
All right. Would you like to present the staff report?
I do. And since it's only Jan on the call, I think we should have a little crickets button that we hit when there's no one in the audience and you say, you know.
Totally have the giggles about it now.
Okay, so staff report. So Karen Labonte on behalf of the City of Cannon Beach seeks DRB approval for intersection realignment pedestrian improvements at Warren Way and South Hemlock intersection. Just to briefly, I'll just touch on a few things here and then I'll bring up and share the screen so you guys can, or I don't even have to share the screen with the audience, but we can share it with you guys and show you what they're doing down there. So it's a realignment pedestrian improvements to include this area, which is a coming together of 4 different zoning districts there. The proposed, I would just jump to 1744-80 site design evaluation criteria. Proposed alteration should have limited impact according to the site plan provided. Alterations are proposed to realign the intersection to improve ADA access, offering additional sidewalk access to the south end intersection, which is increasingly a pedestrian route for seasonal foot traffic. The intersection correction and upgrade from its current configuration replaces temporary safety posts with upgraded signage and striping. There are no architectural design elements, so I don't believe that those are a criteria review. As far as landscape, which is 1744-100, staff comment, proposal should have limited impact as shown in the landscaping plan. All work will take place in the city and state right-of-way area and will not affect adjacent properties. The existing landscaping of the impacted area consists of mostly paved areas on the southwest, northwest, and northeast corners, where such areas will be minimally landscaped by adding additional lawn area to meet the new ADA sidewalk improvements and serve as drainage wells. Southwest corner will replace approximately 2,500 square feet of paved and posted area with a lawn drainage well, while the northwest and northeast corners will provide approximately 500 square feet of additional lawn to meet the sidewalk, curb, and gutter. Any future additional landscaping by Fresh Foods, Tolovana Inn, or any other party would be required to come before the design review board for major modifications. And so just to kind of briefly go over that, I'll share my screen here and okay, these are the existing conditions which are included in your packets as Exhibit C. This is looking north, and you can see those posts there sticking out there. These are existing conditions looking east, Fresh Food corner. South, showing that big eyebrow thing that comes out there to try to correct the realignment with those safety post areas. And then looking west at the corner of the state Tolovana Park Inn. The corrections, as you can see from the plans here for the pedestrian improvements, follow pretty much those peg post areas. And just what they're doing is taking the landscape as it exists now inside down to that sidewalked area, striping it and making those ADA improvements to the crosswalk areas and fairly basic improvements from the landscape perspective. I did want to note, though, and made that in the staff report as a condition of approval, anything this is all being done in the right of way. You can see the right of way lines right back here, see? And so anything done outside of the right of way, say, for instance, Fresh Food or Tolovana Inn wants to improve that area, they would have to come before you guys to upgrade that or improve that in the future. Any questions?
Nothing happening on the southeast corner.
No.
Okay.
All right. Are we going to go through public testimony?
Karen's here if you had any questions of her or you needed any details that I didn't provide.
Just so you guys know, this was grant money that funded this intersection. And because we got grant money, ODOT funds that grant. And so through Business Oregon. And so not only does the Business Oregon folks who oversee all kinds of federal funding and grant money review this, as well as the RFP that had to go out, ODOT actually reviewed it to ensure that we were meeting all those ADA requirements for the curbs and all that kind of stuff. And so it's gone through a lot of approval process during the phases. The city also has a contract agreement with Tolovana Inn and they have agreed during this process of presenting all this to council and whatnot, that they would water and maintain that sod going forward. So during that process, any discussion about any additional landscaping was not on the table. The city was extending sod. That was the extent of what we were doing under this grant funding. And they weren't really interested in it because they didn't want it to block their sign visibility. So they were concerned we may be trying to put something that would block that. So all that was hashed out way back when we first pursued this grant.
Great. Any other questions?
I thought that when this came up once before, I didn't remember where or when, that there was a element that included making it a four-way stop.
It is. It has 2 stop signs now, and we're adding 2 more, which makes it a 4-way stop.
Okay, but that's not included in anything I see here.
It is.
It is in that packet there.
Is it? Oh. Maybe I just,
Adding the stops on the north-south.
I don't think Jeff mentioned that when he did the
Yeah, I don't think I
highlights, but
went over my review, but yeah, it is.
It is very much part. I mean, that's the decision the council made that triggered this whole project.
okay, well, that's good.
And the long-range plan or possible long-range plan, which is in the TSP, is like 10 years from now to review that, whether it goes to a roundabout or not.
Yeah.
That's 10 years down the road,
All right. when they were still there, because I've seen some interesting
Oh, yeah.
near misses.
It scares me every time I go through it, actually.
Well, this should provide more safety for pedestrians, right?
I can say that businesses in that area are thrilled about this.
Yeah.
And as much as we were worried that it might obstruct, traffic and things like that, this team has done a really good job, the contractor, of minimizing that. And they said, the businesses, they said they'll tolerate that to get the four-way stop. Because there's been some dangerous situations where people couldn't cross safely.
So where is it being realigned now, or it was realigned some time ago and that's why we're going back and fixing the landscaping?
You mean originally
Yeah.
concerning this intersection? Lancaster Engineering did a traffic study for the city a long time ago.
Okay.
And the candlesticks were temporary in the sense that when that study was done, they felt by controlling the lanes that could, approach that intersection would be beneficial to being able to make it a little safer. This is when the store was going to be built. And so they left it at the two-way stop, feeling like because prior 2 lanes could approach that intersection, the the west side and the east side. Both of them had 2 lanes. So when 2 cars pull up, you have one person that may be trying to go straight or turn left, and you also have a car trying to turn right. And so all that's going on at the same time, somebody's trying to walk across the corner.
Yeah.
And you had that on both sides, east and west. And so that was the purpose of the candlesticks, is to narrow that down and then come back and do a study to say, has this been effective? So when I actually was hired on and the previous director was in place, he said, it's time for us to follow up and see what happens. We need to do another study. So we had to chase the funding to do that. Finally was able to do it, did another study, and this is what it ended up. I presented that to council and I said, you have a choice to leapfrog forward and go ahead and do your roundabout, or we can do the 4-way stop or leave it as it is. Because the business were asking, why do the candlesticks still remain? They were supposed to be temporary,
Right.
unsightly. Let's get it out. And we had to do the study to follow up to see if it was.
My dog likes them.
He doesn't know which one to choose. It's like my dog.
He's got a lot of other choices. In that.
Yeah, right. Yeah, actually, he normally hits the wood
So that's
post.
kind of what brought us to where we are.
I have a question.
Sure.
So the little pokey thing, the little textured,
Yeah.
has that already been poured in the?
Are you talking the yellow ADA ramps that are bumping?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's already there?
So they're not there yet.
Okay. I'm just curious why I may not know, but why they don't line up with the actual crosswalk? At an angle.
They will, you'll see once
Okay.
they get it done and we do the strike.
Because there's a few downtown that are like that. They don't actually line
It
up.
looks kind of funny right now, but
Okay.
it'll make sense once they get in place. If you look at the diagram, you'll kind
Yeah.
of see how it lines up.
Okay.
It does kind of look funny right now. I've been down looking at it. They just poured concrete this week.
Yeah, I thought
It took a long time to get the concrete here, and then we had some funky weather, so we had to do some testing to make sure that concrete was poured effectively. And I asked a similar question. I said, this kind of seems off to me.
yeah, because it's also for like blind people that
But it's
have
not.
nowhere to cross. So just curious. I mean, okay.
It's good. I'm glad you're paying attention.
Mhm.
Anything else?
I'll be the devil's advocate. What happens if we don't approve this?
Well, I think that's the thing, playing devil's advocate, I honestly, that's when I didn't even think, because if you read, I brought it up for you guys, if you want to look at it. It's questionable whether you guys, in my opinion, have the ability to look at this, because you're looking at public improvements, sure, right? But it says street improvements that involve design elements such as landscaping, lighting, sidewalks, or street furniture. So, yeah, I mean, but can you change the road layout or anything. I don't think it gives you that kind of thing. It just says, well, we don't like these sidewalk crossings or whatever. I guess you do, but like you said,
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it. I'm just curious, since kind of a
yeah,
cart after the horse situation.
Jeff, the same thing. I said, why are we here
Yeah.
talking about this? Because we don't get to dictate the way the sidewalks look. It's mandated to us how those have to be and the ADA requirements they have to meet. So
And we saw it last month or a couple months ago. Yeah. So should we approve the site plan and the landscape design, or do we need to do architectural? I don't think.
nothing architectural about it.
Okay.
I move we approve the site plan.
I second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Pardon me, with the conditions that, where was it?
Yeah, you can put that under the landscape.
Okay. Where did I see that?
Recommended conditions.
I just for the, I have one condition, any landscape or other improvements on adjacent properties will require.
Come back.
Okay. I move we approve the landscape plan with the condition that any other improvements on adjacent properties require design review.
I second.
All those in favor, or is there any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
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 And I don't think you'll get an easier one than that, Michelle. to-
Yeah. I'm glad this is
Yeah.
what I think.
thank you guys very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Do you want, would someone make a motion to sign the appropriate orders?
So moved.
Oh, a second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 All right. So then we have a work session on code audit.
So I'm going to, and this out here. A little worksheet for you.
Oh.
As you guys know, we're getting ready to have another joint work session on code audit. And so I thought it would be a nice time for us to talk about the ERB language, the design review language, how it's kind of, we talked about it in the past, how it works and doesn't work and how to make some improvements. But let me get to the slideshow. Okay. And so, the purpose of the comprehensive plan is to find the gap between the comprehensive plan. And this is a chart showing, I think I've showed you before, the citations from our comprehensive plan and how many each year have been updated or what's been added or amended. And as you can see, we did quite a bit back with the introduction in the 80s and in the 90s, but we've slowly done very little of the comprehensive plan. So I think as the last work session panned out, you heard a lot saying that I think we need to also have a visioning session as well. And so the next joint session will have half of it will be on the visioning, and then the other one will be on the code audit. And so it's really about identifying the gaps between the zoning and the development code, which is your subdivision development ordinance and design review guidelines, and that comprehensive plan guidance language. These are the 4 citations in our comprehensive plan that have to do with historic. And as you can read from it, it's not that, there's not quite as much as I think a lot of people think. And there's really not much as way as village. There's only really 2 citations in there about village character. And so, you hear that a lot. We throw it around quite a bit, but what does it mean? Well, I think that's going to be at the heart of the discussion coming up. Currently, a lot of people think that, oh yeah, well, we've got lots of architectural standards. Well, if this is the only architectural standards that you have for single family dwellings in Cannon Beach, and that says at least 2 of the following architecture features each home must have. dormers, more than 2 gables, recessed entries, covered porch entry, bay window, building offset, deck with railings or planted benches, or a garage, carport, or other accessory structures. And so most people have a garage or carport, and if they don't, they're going to have a porch or a covered porch or a deck or something like that. So these are very minimal standards, and I don't think a lot of people really realize that. So that's the other thing that I wanted to kind of talk about tonight. So the review process is, of course, City Council, Planning Commission, the DRB. Those are the three that handle the land use and applications for the city. DRB decisions are grouped under major and minor, with the DRB chair kind of as a functional component in there because of this. Revisions of approved plans, 1744-110 says the city and the chair of the design review board shall review the proposed modifications to determine whether it constitutes a major or minor revision of the approved plans. And the minor modification says are those which result in a insignificant change in the approved plan. The following are examples of minor modifications. We have not been really doing minors this way. If somebody comes in and they want to just replace a like for a like, or a shake roof or something, it's something minor, or an HVAC system or something on the exterior that's minor. What they've traditionally done is just ask the DRB chair, if this can be considered a minor. And if the DRB chair approves that as a minor, then it's just considered a minor. And so we would like, at least staff wise, and I think as the city, is to make it a little bit more objective and also clarify that. So currently, we're looking at all new construction or new development, except for single family residences, and then minors, which I just read you that language. Any alteration of site improvements for exterior lighting, landscaping, or off-street parking, any exterior alteration to an existing duplex, triplex, or multifamily, and any public improvements, which we just saw, those are all considered majors, okay? And then, like I said, the minors are small things that have already a part of an approved plan, okay? So tonight, I want to kind of walk through what you guys are comfortable with as far as review and procedural thresholds. So there's different ways to do this, okay? So you can do it by type, you can do it by location, you can do it by other means, okay? And so what is probably one of the best kind of filters for doing these kind of things is to say, well, I think the DRB should be doing all commercial review. They should be doing all multifamily. I don't think they should be doing accessory dwelling units. I don't think they should be doing duplex or something, or, so in other words, do that by a type, but you can also, as this spreadsheet shows, you can slice it up differently, right? So if you look at this matrix that I put before you, you can do all exterior commercial alterations is what that would be called. And that's what we do now, right? So that first box would be checked on that. But you could also do just only new buildings, right? Only new commercial buildings, okay? Or only new multifamily buildings, or only new duplexes. So what I'm trying to say, there's levels of granularity at each one of these kind of things. And so that might be a new way to kind of look at these things and say, well, we could just look at it through, I don't really think the DRB should having to be doing every single family, but we should be doing, say, one that changes in a percentage of the square footage, or a certain number of square footage added on, or a dollar amount. And so that's what those next categories are. And then finally, like I said, the other way to look at this is by location. And so you might say, yeah, I think all commercial, regardless, any exterior alteration of a commercial needs to be DRB approved, right? But you might say for single family, for instance, no, I think single family, really, we just need to do those in the presidentials, or no, I think they should be the ones on the primary streets, Hemlock, Sunset, those type. So I've heard that from different people. That's why I brought that up, okay? And then the other one, that last category, it might be just by historic. It might be structures that are over 50 years old or something like that. So those are kind of the general ways of looking at this and breaking it out. And then there's that next extra step after the matrix that we'll talk about after this, is that you can also go further with granularity. And I think Michelle's talked about it. I know Alicia, we've talked about it as well. Do you want to do color? Do you want to do materials? Do you want to do those type of things? And so that's getting down into even further granular discussion. And so as part of that discussion, there's also the components of what are those thresholds for administrative, minor, and major. So right now we have very few administrative, okay? We say signage, of course, is administrative, except if it's freestanding or if you're not going to be doing a wooden sign, okay? Those come before you guys. But if it's just a typical sign and it fits within our objective criteria of signage for the commercial district or the residential district, then that's an administrative approval, which means Robert or I, with Katie's help, sign off on those. And then, you know, everything else right now, like I said, we take to DRB, to the DRB chair, which is Mike right now. If somebody comes in and says they want to do, I think this is a minor, we're just moving the doorway. Sure, okay. Then if he says, no, I think that needs to go before the DRB, even if they think it's a minor, then that is a major, or it might truly be a major, which is most of the things that you all get, okay? So I would just like to hear from you if you guys want to actually walk through this step by step. As you know, I really do think that all commercials should be done. But I do think that there's minor levels that don't really need to come before us, or, you know, should be administratively approved, or how you guys want to discuss this. But I thought, you know, this kind of lays out how it's usually done in other jurisdictions and the different gradations that you can go through. But I thought this at least also gives you a little score sheet of which ones you're hitting on. So I'm happy to at least kind of start the conversation with commercial. You know, that's the easiest right now. Every new commercial building that comes in, or any exterior commercial above that kind of minor gradation, is handled by you. I have not heard over the past 3 years that there's really any want to change that. I know there's a desire to change the code, the language that reviews that, but really the threshold of wanting you to come before you guys, I think that seems to be pretty general.
Yeah. Before we go through the whole matrix, do you guys have any general comments or general thoughts about what you want to do? I guess
Yeah.
I was thinking maybe we could get some general consensus.
Well, I think that the woman that was with the last code audit, that was the extra lady. I thought she'd said that because our outline is kind of loosey-goosey for DRB, that it was actually illegal for us to have any weight on residential, but I may have misunderstood. I swear, I thought she'd said that. She was like, oh, because it's not like, okay, your light has to be this blah and this, and you have to use this glass. I thought she was saying that's not a thing. And I was like, that sounds correct, but I may be wrong.
Yeah.
Saying illegal. Is that what you
Illegal,
said?
yeah, that it was that would not be in our.
I think I will check on that, Michelle, but
Yeah.
my take on that, and I don't know, Robert may know as well, but my take on what she was trying to say is that if it was subjective that it is.
Okay.
Yeah.
She was afraid it was too subjective.
Subjective, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I'm making words up a little bit.
No, it's a good
Yeah.
question. Yeah.
Yeah, and in my experience, the places where you see the most extensive restrictions being placed onto private single-family dwellings is going to be in sort of a covenant restricted homeowners association type of environment. So for example, Sun River, if you're familiar with that, it's not an actual incorporated town. It is literally a private HOA type of community. So it comes with a lot of different land use controls because of that. And so being an incorporated city, we don't necessarily have the same abilities to apply those.
Unless we change the code. I'm not advocating, but yeah. I guess one of my thoughts is that visioning process is sort of critical to inform what the community wants us to do. I sort of feel like our job is to be of service and implement whatever code is adopted as a result of whatever visioning process happens. So while we might have preferences or ideas, and certainly when we get into any kind of discussion with the council or with the planning commission, I would like us as a group to have some consensus to be able to say, well, the design review board is comfortable with this, or we're not comfortable with that, or, oh, hey, Mike.
Oh,
He's
there he is.
Hey, Mike. Let me unmute him. There you go.
It's St. Patrick.
Good eye.
All of a sudden it popped up.
Between Hawaii and daylight savings time, I'm completely screwed up. I'm so sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. Yeah. I forgot. Yeah. You're back home though now, aren't you?
I'm home, yeah.
Okay.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
Hey, Mike, we were just talking about I had kind of talked about the different levels of review and design review board, talking about the code audit that we're going to have the next joint work session coming up in April 19th or something like that.
Something like that.
I think it's April 19th. And so I brought back kind of a matrix, which here I can share with the screen with you. Okay, and so
While you're looking for that, I'll fill in so you can concentrate.
yeah,
What I was thinking about this sheet is, and I don't know if you were advocating, we shouldn't look at ADUs, or you're just using that as an example, but to me, like an ADU and a duplex aren't the same thing, but they have very different impacts on a residential area, and people might have very different feelings about them
Yeah.
related to the visioning. And so, anyway, I just, Mike, what I was advocating for is that we have some discussion as a group so that when we get to the work session with the planning commissioners and the counselors, that we have some sense as a group of where we recommend going, not just all of our individual opinions. I mean, we're all entitled to our individual opinions, but if we had some consensus as a group, I feel like it would be nice.
I agree with
That's great. Yeah, I think absolutely on board with that. The thing that's bugged me for a long time is that the ADUs need to be reviewed by the design review board, and I think that's not really needed in the long run, you know, especially if we're trying to incentivize ADUs. But you know, I mean, just like this last one, the people could have called it a guest room or anything else. Of course, it has its own kitchenette. That's what an ADU is defined as. But I don't know if anybody agrees with me that we don't need to be reviewing, you know, ADUs any more than, I don't know. I can't think of an example, but
yeah.
I think it would maybe encourage a few more people to put ADUs on their property if they didn't have to go through the DRB process.
Seems like the only requirement we've ever imposed is that they not rent them out for short-term use.
Yeah.
And that could be probably written into a standard
It
rather
is,
than.
yeah, it's already in our,
Yeah.
yeah.
Is an
Yeah.
ADU always inside the main structure or sometimes an ancillary structure, right? So in those cases, I think maybe it should be reviewed. I mean, that's why I think there are, you said the granularity, there are different considerations. Most of them, I think you're right, Mike, if they're interior and not making an impact on the exterior, except maybe to add a door or something like that, I think they wouldn't rise to the level of us needing to review them, but it seems like where there's been controversy has been a freestanding structure or something that's significant. And so if we had criteria that identified, some percentage of change or you've said square footage change or, I don't know, something like that.
Right. Yeah, that's true too.
I'm not
Maybe
quite ready to say no ADU should be reviewed. But I think the majority of them, like you said, if they're interior to an existing building, to an existing house, I don't see, or a garage, I don't know why we would need to review that.
Yeah.
Well, what if they're on top of a garage?
So then I would think that there might be some criteria that we could create that would make it compatible with the house or the structure or whatever, something that could be objective. And if they met the criteria, I think maybe they could go through, but if there was an exception or just like with the planning commission, right? When you have to reduce the setback or you have to deal with something, then that's what requires the review. But if they meet the standards, if we develop good standards,
Yeah.
fewer things have to come to us. It's only when they can't meet the standards that we need to consider options, I feel.
Yeah. And it seems to me from what you're saying, Alicia, it's almost as if you're saying a lot of this will depend on if we choose to go form-based code wise, or, more of that. If we go that more objective form-based code, it may
Solve itself.
resolve itself through that, because you could say only these areas, form-based code would, we would review it through form-based code, these areas, so.
Well, I'd like to ask if the board thinks that if you want to weigh in on this lot coverage issue and maybe exclude ADUs from the lot coverage requirement as an incentivizer.
I absolutely support that. So you would be allowed to have greater lot coverage. It's just the main structure that has to meet, we'd have to be careful how we worded it, right? Because you wouldn't want to end up covering the entire lot, I don't think.
But just like you said,
It's an exception.
it's the thought. It's going to be in the details how you do that, but the thought is that use that as an incentive type of.
What do you guys think?
Well, I have a question about this, the ADUs. Oh, it's written in the code that they won't be short-term rentals. Right? But that's written in the code, but that's not necessarily what happens. So are we encouraging more short-term rentals now? Like, even though it's written?
We don't have any proof that it's not, we don't have any. All of our complaints, we have not had one of those, okay? So if you have a complaint and you'd like to register that, I think a lot of what we get into is perceptions. We don't know, we have not, our short-term rental task force, our enforcement officer, we do not have an example of that.
Of short-term rentals being abused?
Being utilized as an ADU being utilized as a short-term rental.
Oh, okay, as an ADU, okay.
We don't have that.
Okay.
And we do have a full-time code enforcement officer now, which we didn't in the past, but I think that's certainly a disincentive for anybody that wants to try to rent out their ADU that way.
We have a software that scrapes websites for that. So if they post it on the internet, we will find it.
Oh,
we subscribe to a software that does that. So if they're doing it some way under the table in a different way.
Okay. Okay.
But not through Airbnb or
Not,
one of
no,
those.
anything posted on the internet, we pay for a software that scrapes all those sites. And so anything that goes online gets caught in there.
Okay. Okay. I lived in next to a couple that constantly was rented out more.
Mhm.
So I mean, I've seen it, not an ADU, but was like, oh, this is just going against something I'd seen with my own eyes, but it was probably through some friends of friends, but it was during the beginning of COVID, it was constant. It was like, oh, okay. So I don't know.
You need to report that, Michelle.
Well, I didn't know.
Now you know.
So any thoughts on, I know that Mike, I think you've spoke about single family, anything on a primary road, a Sunset or Hemlock as maybe design review.
On the ocean front or Hemlock, maybe Spruce Street, through the from Gower to Washington sort of thing. That there aren't that many vacant lots, but
Yeah, so only new single family.
oh, yeah, well, or possibly, or major reconstruction, major renovation additions. But certainly Hemlock, and I might lose you. My battery's running low, but I'll switch to my phone. But certainly oceanfront and Hemlock, and that's what brought this to the fore. Of course, was the Lavender House, on Washington and Hemlock.
And then, so I guess I'd get into that. It's a good kind of segue into kind of granularity of review. In other words, are you guys, as far as you've seen, would you like to go with form-based code and then, but do you want to get into materials? Do you want to get into colors? The one thing that when, I bring this up and Robert and I talk about it is, I just know from the Ironman, what happened with that, these things are, unless there's like I said, where, okay, you got these color palette, the 12 colors, you can choose that. If you want to do something different, that's a conditional use, or you go through a different design review, special exception or something like that. But unless you have some kind of process like that, I think you can be faced with what you just got, appeal after appeal, and it could grind on, taking up our time, your time, planning commission or a city council's time. So I think that's the thought that I want, to kind of cautionary tale of going into these kind of things. But I do think that you can have more review and down to that level, but how it's done is really the key to that.
So Jeff, are you saying that through form-based design, you could write enough requirements that it wouldn't have to be reviewed on a subjective level by the board? Is that the goal of form-based design?
Well, yes, it's a lot less subjective. I mean, most form-based codes, I think I've shown you guys in the past, Beaufort or some of those that down on the coast where I've worked, they will get down into those types of details, whether it's how much percentage of glazing, glass is required on a facade, to the different, types of forms that you can use. And then colors or materials as well. So you can only use certain colors, certain materials. Even when I was at the county level in Georgia, we had materials, even just our normal ordinance. We wouldn't, because they didn't want vinyl siding and things like that. So we pretty much put certain types of materials were off limits. And so I know that we say wooden signage, but we really don't have much else that we really, but I think you can do that. And so that's what my suggestion would be, is you go through a form-based code and then have some exception type of procedure or clause for those that want to do something unique or different. In St. Mary's, I think it was, if somebody wanted to do wall murals or something like that, that wasn't allowed in our sign ordinance, but you could seek a special condition to do that. And many did. And so we don't even have that ability here. And that's what I'm saying. There should be, certain avenues for some types of things. So.
Yeah. But that's what I'd like to see. I'd like to see the form-based code with either materials, colors that are allowed, and then some process for an exception to that. Otherwise, I don't think we have any business enforcing it, because we don't have anything to rely on. And you're right, we're just going to get appealed every time if someone doesn't like it. And that concerns me.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
All right. I think Beth's got it. Let's see, has to unmute. Let's see.
He's switching.
All right. Let's see.
Okay,
There you go.
I'm on.
Oh.
Okay.
Turn off the other.
Gotta turn off the other one.
Oh, yeah.
There you go.
All right. You got it, Mike?
I think he's muted.
Oh, is he still muted?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see. Oh,
So as concepts, I mean, for me personally, I'd like us to review commercial, multifamily. I'd like to have some standards for duplex, single family and ADUs, and then review exceptions. And I guess accessories, all four of those. I don't know that we need to be reviewing them. And I want to review, these are just what Alicia wants, right?
that's why I gave these out individually. So
Yeah,
I would prefer you, even if you don't do it tonight, even if you want to do it over the coming week, just to
got it.
use this as kind of a worksheet, and then you can just drop it off to me, and I'd like to include it and send it along.
Wanted to hear
Code
what you
folks.
thought.
I know, I was gonna tell you what, and I like the idea of doing exterior, and I like alterations by percentage or square footage, just because the dollars, that's a problem.
Yeah, that's a good problem.
Yeah.
Okay.
So there's been a lot of discussion about capping the maximum size of a house, which personally I don't think is ever going to happen. But maybe instead of capping it, there could be a limit above which there must be a design review.
That's exactly.
Yeah.
Or it's also been mentioned as, I don't know
Or area.
if it was Mike or whoever, that, anything above a certain square footage, new home would be under design review. And it doesn't have to really do with the cap as much, but anything that's over the 2,500 mark or
Yeah.
2,000.
Even if it's a single family residence.
Yeah. And so that, I think size is a good way maybe to look at that. But yeah, I don't know if you've seen Tim Ramey and that group's, tiered approach, which is a little similar to the one that I first approached that I had taken. But theirs is just a two-step tiered approach where it's held to one percentage, and then it's accumulated anything over that 5,000 or 10,000, I think theirs is. is a much reduced. I think it's down to 0.2 or so. 0.5 for the first, and then 0.2, anything over 10,000. And that does a fairly good grade. And so I think that's going to be presented this next joint work session. And so as one of the alternatives or something similar to that.
So what do we write in these little things? Yes, no.
Well, I think that you could just put, if you feel that all exterior commercial, you would just check it or
Okay.
yes, or,
Okay.
and then for multifamily, I think, like Alicia said, she would like to see both commercial and multifamily, anything in those exterior wise. And then duplex, single family or something like that, that might go down to just a percentage of an alteration or a certain square footage added on, that.
Unless the visioning says that people want us to look at that, in which case I want really good criteria.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Agreed.
And I really do want to encourage the accessory dwelling units or workforce housing. And in the budget committee meeting yesterday, all the revenue was up in all the funds except for that one. And I understand that there was a hiccup with that or whatever,
Yeah.
but it just tells you, for me anyway, that there's an issue there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. And I mean, you look at which I'll be doing hopefully in the next time I come before the city council on this matter, I'll bring some comparison numbers to other jurisdictions that do this and how much is going towards affordable housing in these communities. So
The idea that we can remove disincentives anywhere we can by either allowing exceptions or allowing increases to lot coverage or floor area ratio or whatever to encourage workforce housing, I think is really important.
yeah. Mike, Mike, we can't hear you. Mike, can you unmute? Yeah, Beth, Mike, we can't hear you. Can you unmute?
Can you hit the ask to unmute?
I did it.
Oh, and it doesn't.
Keep doing it and it's just.
Oh, it's just not working.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay, there I am.
there we go. All right. Go
Right,
ahead.
right. I was hitting the wrong button. This is Beth's iPad. Anyway, I helped develop the Elk Creek Terrace development and those single family houses along Elk Creek Road 20 years ago. And God, more than that, 27 years ago. And there was, the developers said, there's just no way that we can shingle, we wanted them to do shingles, natural cedar shingles, and it would have been a deal killer there. But then Shorewood was built, right behind City Hall. And that is all shingled. So it's hard to say, exactly how that shakes out in the development process. But I mean, hardy plank is used, I think, too much. I mean, it would have been nice if the conference center on Spruce Street could have at least made that facade, just as you come into town, a shingled facade. But those are the kinds of things that we could put forth in the ordinance. I think if something is in the most visible location of town, at the entrance of town, whether it's a single family or a commercial building, I think natural shingles would be a decent requirement as part of the code requirement. I don't know if anybody agrees with me, but
What about any other kind of natural lap siding that's natural wood instead of hardy
Oh,
plank?
yeah. Hardy, not hardy plank, but laps, cedar
Yeah.
lap siding
Lap siding,
or board and bat is fine, but cedar.
right. What I think we can encourage, I'm not hearing any disagreement. Do we do we as a group feel that natural wood is better,
I second.
preferable to hardy plank? Yeah.
Yeah, of course.
All right, well, we got that one, Mike.
Done.
All right.
And yeah, and like you said, it gives them, like Mike said, along maybe the main corridors or whatever. And then, it gives them something, to say, hey, at least maybe we consider it in this as a stepping. If it works there and everyone likes it, then they can pilot it out.
A long time ago, I made a comment about historic districts, and I don't ever want that to be misconstrued. I was never recommending that. Actually, value that from my past, but there are some real weather issues over here and some real, speaking from a personal situation, right? We had an old house that could have been considered demolition by neglect, I suppose. But, with the pier and post foundation, it just deteriorated over time. And there was no way that after we had a very small fire and a lot of water damage, it was insane to invest in that poor foundation, right? It would have been ridiculous. So we did tear down, and then you trigger a bunch of other code requirements at 80% of the value of the house. You're bringing everything up to current code, which is like, you need to have a whole new house, and putting a whole new house on top of a bad foundation is a bad idea. So I guess I have concerns if there's a desire to go down that path. I'm not sure that maybe other people have taken better care of things over the years, other families,
No.
but some of those houses are in bad shape because they're on bad foundations.
Yeah. And, I think that, there's ways of, you can do like you said, a true historic district or something like that. But like you said, I don't know if we really have the stock to do a true historic district, but you can also incentivize those kind of structures to stay or whatever by doing your form-based code to reflect those kind of structures, but B, like I said, giving some types of incentives or whatever, if it's a transfer development right or something like that, where you can convert that extra space if somebody does want to improve that cottage and bring it up to, then incentivize that kind of effort. So I think the code audit, the consultants are going to be looking into that. They said they were going to be bringing back some stuff on that. So hopefully we'll talk about that at the next level. Because, I have worked also, though, in areas where, they can volunteer type of homes into the district to kind of do what I'm just saying to get the protections and stuff. So.
And the tax write-offs and that sort of thing.
That's right. Exactly.
Well, we saved a little cottage it was on Jefferson Street and moved it to Jackson Street. And that, it was just dumb luck that we were able to do that. It wasn't through any kind of historic preservation thing, but in Astoria, you can, what they do if there is a demolition request is to delay the demolition, or I don't think the fire district burns houses anymore, but they used to, but delay demolition until for say 30 days until somebody may come forward to move the house over to another location. Or if that's not possible, what they do is require that you document the house with photographs, high quality photographs, and salvage as much of the original materials as possible. So that's something that Astoria does in their historic districts that might be something to think about, because there's still quite a few cottages, old houses, early 20th century cottages in the President Streets that could be saved, and I don't know. I've been looking for another one, but
Yeah, I think so. I think that's hopefully something we'll see as well.
And a lot of them that are being reconstructed are being done sensitively. I mean, they're being done to be compatible with the neighborhood.
Well, yours certainly was, I must say.
We tried, but I mean, some of the new ones I think are looking really nice too.
Any other things anybody wanted to cover or thoughts on?
Where are we with the combining of lots? Is that a done deal that there's no more of that?
There's no more of that.
Okay, so we don't need to weigh in on that.
No more of combining lots. I think the only other thing that will come up if we do go into this, whether it's changing the lot coverage and floor area ratio to make for smaller or whatever, the only thing that will come up is maybe what we do with the non-conforming language. We may want to look at that because it was mentioned a couple of times that it's done by, the improvement value right now. And so we may want to look at it a different way. So
What would be the other ways you could look at it?
well, currently it's I think what's 50% of the improvement value or something like that over a 3-year period and everything. And so, that's a common language. I mean, you get that in most codes, something very similar to that. But I think a lot of people find, especially the way the rates have kicked up, it just doesn't keep up, and especially as quickly as it's climbing. In 3 years' time, who tracks that, how we track that, that's maybe if we could probably do that now with e-permitting, but I don't know how they did in the past and don't think they really did too much of that. And so, is that the best way? I don't know if it is, but there's other methods out there now and we might look at that. And, we have a lot of, just like you said, this is an area where you have the small little cottages. A lot of those little cottages are built in the setbacks or on property lines.
Yep.
And so, if you want to save those, what you really don't want is to really force them to tear down. So you might want to change that for certain considerations of those types of things,
Any other thoughts?
And let me segue because I think Jan wanted to say something as well. And it's a perfect time to segue because I think what I just said is about homes near setbacks or on lot lines. Jan will also want to say something about trees, preserving trees and giving some type of a better kind of mesh between the new code that's going to come and our current code. Jan? Let's see if she's still with us. Jan, can you hear us?
Hello,
Hey,
can you hear
Jan.
me?
Yes.
Hi. I just wanted, yes, you're exactly right. One of the things I wanted to just ask for everyone's help with, if we're talking about ADUs, let's please also keep in mind ways that we can preserve more trees on the lots. And I'm not sure how you can do both of those. If you put an ADU, are you taking out trees? So we're losing so many of our trees. It's distressing to a lot of people that I talk with and also to myself. So I don't know how we can do this, but I please just ask everyone to try to do that when you're going through this code audit.
And that's a good point too, related to setbacks and other things, right? Where if you can accommodate keeping a tree by making some other adjustment, then that's a worthwhile endeavor.
Yeah. I think that currently, I know of at least 2 since I've been here where the owner, I think, made a valiant effort to try to save some trees, but knew that it was going to have to go before a review process, before the planning commission. And that's never a guarantee that they're going to get a decision that they want, right? And so I think there should be a better method or attempt to be made to where that could be an administrative approval. And then there's always the appeal period that someone could appeal that decision, the administrative approval. If somebody comes to me and I see that they can go, 5 feet further in the front yard and a 10-foot front yard setback to save a tree in the back, I'm going to approve that administratively, and if somebody wants to challenge that and take it to the planning commission, they can do that. But, why put that first pressure on the owner that wants to save the tree? And I think you're doing that by making them go to the planning commission to get a setback reduction, because A, they have to pay to do it. B, then they have no guarantee they're going to have accepted. Whereas if it's in the footprint of the building, they can take that tree down. And so it's not a win-win situation for anyone. So let's try to make it err on the side of, that administrator is going to make the call to save that tree.
And similarly, if somebody wants to put a driveway straight up their lot, and there's an opportunity for them to go around it, even if it's a little more expense or pavement or whatever, and the planner can say, well, we'd like you to do this to accommodate the tree, then I think that should be an administrative decision as well.
Yeah. Yep.
I guess I lean toward generally anything that maybe used to be minor being administrative, so that there's only coming to the board and administrative.
Yeah. Yeah. And I believe with the form-based code, you're going to get more of that. You would get more of the objective guidelines that, it meets these 7 colors or whatever you want to do, forms, and we sign off on it administratively.
Yeah, because I think as the chair, I've signed off on 90% of the minor requests.
Yeah.
And it should be the administrator.
All right. Anything else, anybody?
Anything else for the good of the order? All right,
I had one thing.
All right, Jan?
Dan?
Yes, I was just wondering, speaking of trees again, has there been any decision about where the 2 cherry replacement trees will be going at the new pot shop?
I haven't seen that yet, Jan. We haven't heard from them since we gave them their last instructions, or, before we would do a final, and we haven't heard anything back from them.
Okay. But we will, right?
That was one of them. Yeah.
Didn't I say that one cherry would be on the sidewalk and the other would be on Cope's parking lot? Didn't I communicate that to you, Jeff?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so. But I mean, we can ask that. I don't think that we haven't seen a plan yet from them. So.
Right. Well, the other cherries that haven't been installed yet are at the Castaways, and they were required to put 2 cherries in that landscape strip. So you might want to give them a call too.
Yeah.
Speaking of that pot shop, I guess that was another thing I thought about related to visioning is parking, right? And the idea that in that particular case, the parking is right out front and much less pedestrian friendly maybe than having the parking in the back. And
definitely. Yeah.
So is that going to be part of what we talk about at some point, or part of the visioning, or?
Yes, I think that's honestly going to be a discussion that will be at a time probably first with the transportation plan.
Yeah.
Then it will go to code audit for more discussion. But yeah, that is definitely something that's on top of my list, is getting better parking regulations.
All right. Well, if there's nothing further, I think we are adjourned.
All right, thanks.
Thank you.
There's no gavel?
Mike.